All right, let's just jump right into this, because today we're unpacking a scientific mystery that honestly completely rewrites how we understand life itself. We're diving into quantum biology, and specifically, we need to talk about the anomaly of the impossible cell. So, back in 2011, a research team was looking inside a living cell, and they found something that literally shattered reality as we know it. They realized that something inside that cell was acting like it existed in two places at the exact same time. You really have to wrap your head around the sheer scale of this paradigm shift. This wasn't some minor glitch or a smudge on a microscope lens. It wasn't just rare. It wasn't unusual but explainable. It was flat out impossible. At least according to the laws of physics that we had trusted for over 100 years. This single measurement basically threw the entire rulebook out the window. By the end of this explainer, you're going to know exactly what they found inside that living tissue. And I'm also going to reveal why some scientists, even today, aren't totally sure this data should have ever been published in the first place. Okay, to really get this, let's contrast what we thought we knew with the kind of spooky reality that researchers actually uncovered. Think back to biology class. They taught us that cells are pretty simple, right? It's all clean, orderly chemistry. Molecules are supposed to just bump into each other following totally predictable rules, kind of like billiard balls rolling around on a table. But over in the quantum physics lab, things are spooky, they're unpredictable, and those rules were traditionally confined to supercooled, highly controlled frozen vacuum environments. But the problem scientists ran into? The deeper that physicists dug into the living cell, the less it looked like simple chemistry, and the more it looked like that weird, spooky quantum reality. Section 1. The impossible cell discovery. Let's go right to where all this trouble started. So, a team of physicists teamed up with biologists at University College London, and they decided to test something pretty wild. They wanted to know if the impossible could happen, not in a frozen vacuum, but in warm, wet, messy living tissue. And specifically, they were looking at enzymes. Those tiny biological machines inside our cells that speed up chemical reactions. Section 2. Enzymes and quantum tunneling. Let's look at the specific, mind-bending trick these tiny enzymes were actually caught doing. It brilliantly illustrates this crazy phenomenon they discovered, known as quantum tunneling. Now, what that means is a particle doesn't go around a physical barrier, and it doesn't climb over it. It just shows up on the other side. It literally never crosses the space in between. It's an actual spatial shortcut. For decades, this was treated like a fun physics party trick, just something subatomic particles did in million-dollar supercooled labs and absolutely nowhere else. But here's the thing. The data from London was crystal clear. Enzymes inside living cells are using this exact tunneling trick to speed up chemical reactions. They're doing this at speeds that classical chemistry just flat out cannot explain. And honestly, the most astonishing part? This impossible spatial shortcut is happening right now, by the millions, inside your own cells while you're sitting here listening to this explainer. But here is where the suspense really ramps up, because that wasn't even the strangest part of the story. If quantum tunneling is actively happening inside us, we have to ask the obvious question: what else might be running on that exact same trick? It turns out enzymes were just the tip of the iceberg. Section 3. Photosynthesis and quantum coherence. To really grasp this, we need to look at the next massive piece of evidence, which takes us back to a 2007 experiment on plant cells at UC Berkeley. In that 2007 study, a physicist pointed lasers at photosynthetic plant cells and caught something that made absolutely zero sense. He caught what's called a coherent state. This means the energy from sunlight wasn't moving through the plant one path at a time. It was actually traveling through every possible path inside the cell all at once, and then collapsing down into the single most efficient route. It's like the sunlight energy inside a leaf knows the perfect answer before it even starts looking. Just think about how unbelievable that is for a second. Quantum engineers spend literally hundreds of millions of dollars building these incredibly fragile setups to try and achieve this exact coherent state for quantum computers, and honestly, they mostly fail. But plants? They've been flawlessly executing this quantum trick totally for free for millions of years. And they do it while surviving in warm, wet, incredibly chaotic leaves. No engineers, no supercooling, just nature. According to absolutely everything we know about physics, quantum coherence is supposed to collapse instantly in conditions like a wet leaf. So the question scientists were forced to ask totally shifted. It stopped being, does this happen? And became, wait, why hasn't this fallen apart yet?
How does such a hyper-fragile quantum state survive in a warm, messy environment?
Section 4, Biology's Uncomfortable Quantum Question. This paradox brings us right to the massive clash between biologists and physicists over these discoveries. Was trace how fast this escalated. First, you have the 2007 Berkeley photosynthesis studies showing plants using coherence. Then, the 2011 UCL study proving our enzymes use quantum tunneling. By 2014, the data was so overwhelming that physicist Jim Al-Khalili and biologist John Joe McFadden published an entire peer-reviewed book making the definitive case for quantum biology.
So we aren't just talking about one weird anomaly anymore. We're talking about enzymes working at impossible speeds, plants perfectly routing sunlight, and get this, even birds navigating across entire continents using the Earth's magnetic field, all thanks to a single, light-sensitive protein sitting right in their eye that relies entirely on quantum mechanics to function.
Now, as you might guess, the reaction from the broader scientific community was, well, mixed, to put it mildly. Traditional physicists pushed back incredibly hard. They argued loudly, saying, look, warm biology just can't sustain quantum states. It's too messy, it's too chaotic. They were, quite frankly, extremely uncomfortable with the idea that the rigid subatomic rules of quantum mechanics could dictate everyday, messy, warm biology.
And yet, despite all the arguments, despite the established theories, and despite the sheer chaos of living tissue, the measurements just kept coming back the exact same way, over and over again. The data was undeniable. Something profound was happening, even if nobody could quite agree on what to call it yet. Section 5, the wall disappears. Here is where all these threads connect right back to our initial impossible 2011 cell.
Because what scientists actually found inside your cells wasn't some new organ or a totally undiscovered molecule. It's a behavior. It is a literal set of quantum effects, tunneling, coherence, playing out in soft, warm, living tissue, which are exactly the conditions physicists spent decades insisting quantum mechanics couldn't survive in. That textbook wall separating simple chemistry from quantum physics is vanishing right before our eyes. In fact, it might not actually be a wall at all. It might just be a place where we stopped looking closely enough.
Which leaves us with this final, kind of uncomfortable but incredibly thrilling thought to ponder. If your basic cells are already pulling off something this strange just to keep you alive, how much of what we call biology is actually just physics wearing a disguise? And hey, maybe that exact same question applies to something even bigger, something sitting between your ears right now as you're processing this very explainer. But we'll save that for another day. Keep questioning and keep learning.